Like the fire, feel the beat. Gday Gridiron can't be beat. Lift your knee and bring the heat. Grabs the MVP elite. From the outback through the field, we got tackles hard to steal. Catch the passes, make it real. Gridiron warriors never kneel. G'day Gridiron, down under and beyond. G'day Gridiron, yeah, the podcast come on strong.
G'day Aussie Gridiron fans, and welcome to the reaction show for the Aussie Gridiron Network. You are listening to G'day Gridiron, and this is the week 12 reaction show. Get my weeks right. I'm a week ahead of myself. You with me, Ian. I have another guest with me tonight. Isaac, who has slowly become our regular, is off earning those $1 again, as we talked about last week. So he'll be back with me next week. He unfortunately is one of those guys that has to work nights every now and then. So sucked into Isaac, but also keep plugging along there, mate, because I know I'll be listening later. So I've got another guest in. I've got one half of the duo that is the Aussie NFL Fantasy Show. He is Australia's number one fantasy analyst on this massive great island that we live on, and it is, of course, Talor Goodall. How you going, mate?
Mate, Isaac's loss is my gain. I'm absolutely pumped to be here, Ian. Absolutely love the show. So for me to get on here, it's definitely a bucket list moment for me, mate. And look, Norm, a couple of years ago when I was on the fantasy pod, there was seagulls having sex outside my car, and this time it was just a spider that I had to fucking put a fist through. So we should be onto a good one tonight, mate.
As long as those spiders aren't just, maybe they're going to come for revenge now. You've just killed like mum or dad or someone. So
I think I got a good piece of it, but yeah, it could have just strolled away and got its fucking family together or got its bloody cronies, and it's probably in a motorcycle gang or something and just coming to get me. But these are a decently sized show, 40 odd minutes. So hopefully I can get through it and then fucking run away from this pack of spiders.
yeah, well, hopefully the Arachnid Mafia doesn't come after you.
We'll see what happens.
We'll know within the next 40 or so minutes, I'm guessing.
You just hear me kicking and screaming, getting carried away by a group of spiders, and I've told you guys exactly what's happening.
Yeah, absolutely. Massive week in the NFL this week. A whole bunch of upsets. A whole bunch of teams that really have no business sort of winning games or pumping up scores like they did. Pumping up scores against really good teams who just pretty much shit the bed for a few of them, or a few that sort of scraped home. So it's been definitely an interesting week. We struggled to find games to preview last week with Brad and Isaac, but if we'd known that the slate was going to go the way it did, I don't know whether we really would have struggled.
Absolutely, mate. My Titans, no one expected them to bloody pull out a win, and to be honest, I kind of wish they didn't. I felt like I was sitting there almost praying on their downfall at the end of the game, and it kind of is sad in a way. Like, you really shouldn't be trying to, hope your team tanks. So you really should be hoping your team wins. But the way the things are, and the fact that I know there's no chance of making the playoffs, it's hard to want them to win. You want the better pick for next year. And I will say, like, it was actually quite nice. I know he still made some shitty mistakes, but to see Will Levis actually pull a game out like that, and he actually looked quite good in moments, it's at least confident, a little bit of confidence for next year and moving forward that he could be the guy that we want. But look, the jury's out still on him. He still makes horrendous mistakes at the worst moments.
Oh, yeah.
At least I've kind of got like some, positive to take out of their quarterback out of this season. And if he wins a couple more games, at least you could use that as a bright light for next year.
Yeah, that's right, mate. I mean, yeah. If you get some fun moments out of your quarterback and they're still winning games, I think that's a pretty good win. Even if they do throw a few horrendous picks and then you come back with maybe like an 80-yard bomb or something, and still win games. That's all the fun stuff. That's the good stuff. You could be a Vikings fan where every week is on the edge of your seat when it really shouldn't be. You can age probably like 30 years in the time a Vikings fan watches a 3-hour game.
I said this before the season started, probably on the fantasy show, but I would still rather see like flashes. Like when you're looking at a young quarterback, all you want to see is flashes of, what of potential things that you could work on for the next couple of years, and just reasons to believe this guy could actually be special and could, have the traits of a good quarterback. Whereas like what you saw out of like Bryce Young in year one, I'm not writing him off by any, stretch of the imagination, but the problem with a guy like him was he didn't really have those in year one, and it was hard to look at that and go, all right, this is what he can build on in year two. Whereas like Levis, I feel like if he can just get those horrendously shit things out of his game, he's actually got a lot to work on like he could be great for 80% of the game, but the problem is that 20% is so bad that it like ruins the game for them. Like he's just, if he can just get that out of his game, I actually think a decent quarterback is there. So yeah, I'm seeing flashes of brilliance. I would almost rather him pull back some of the brilliance and bring back all the shitness. That would be amazing.
Yeah, well, when you really want your team to tank for that high draft pick, you really want that shitness back. I think I was talking to you. They've gone from the solid number 2 overall pick to probably about 7th or 8th now, just with that win. So, I mean, I don't know if you really want them to get a couple more wins, but professional athletes, man, they still go out there to win a game. They've got no idea about how to tank, even though everyone knows that the NFL tanks in some ways.
Especially within division too. Like a division game like that, I can see why it's really hard. Like those guys are trying to play for paychecks next year, and they see a division rival over there, and they just want to beat them. There's a coach obviously trying to, keep his job for next year. I can see why it's really, really hard. So look, if Levis wins a couple more games and looks great, and they get like the 8th pick or something, then that might give them enough, confidence to just go, all right, build the O-line or build around Levis again next year. So it might not be the worst thing.
That's right. That is the good thing. You don't necessarily need to be in the top 4 or 5 picks if you know you're really not going to go for the QB either. You can be a bit further down because at least you're going to get the top O lineman or top D lineman, anything like that. So, hey, while we talk about, you speak about Bryce Young, let's go through. How about a few reactions? Bryce Young threw 35 times for 263 yards and a touchdown as the Carolina Panthers took the inevitable Kansas City Chiefs down to the wire at home this week. Young has thrown for 784 yards and 4 TDs since returning to the starting lineup after he was benched for none other than the Ginger Ninja Andy Dalton earlier in the season. He's looked like a pretty different QB since returning, though, hasn't he, Tay?
He sure has, mate. And look, there's a lot worse things in the world than being behind the Ginger Ninja. I think we all know that. He's just a handsome devil. So he comes in and he's just he's a bit of a sniper off the bench. But look, I'm with you. I thought Bryce Young's kind of built every game that he's come back. He had that first game. I think was it London or the one in Munich? I think
the Munich game.
Yeah, he beat the Giants. Yeah. I just feel like he's kind of built every game since then. And this game was amazing. It's not like you could say this was an awesome matchup, for Bryce Young. It was basically one of the worst matchups you can have for a quarterback. Like, this Chiefs defense has been amazing against almost everything. Like, they shut down the run completely, so you basically are forced to pass, and they're obviously not going to bite on any play action or anything like that. So you have to really beat them yourself. And, we all know Spags has, so many tricks up his sleeve to try and stop quarterbacks and stop wide receivers and everything. But Bryce Young still threw for that many yards. And I just felt like he did a really good job keeping this Carolina team in there. And to be honest, like if you're going to do that against the Chiefs, there's going to be a lot better matchups moving forward. So I just felt like he looked quite good. Look, he didn't blow the socks off the Chiefs, and he didn't have these ridiculous stats. But honestly, if you're getting 250, 260 and 1 against the Chiefs, I think there's an opportunity he could have some very good numbers moving forward. And I just think that might give Carolina at least, some reason to believe that this guy might actually go back to being the number 1 pick that they thought they had.
They don't have great matchups going forward for the rest of this season, but I feel like if he can show the same kind of things he showed in this game against the Bucks, the Eagles, the Cowboys, even that might be a good matchup for him. The way the Cowboys are playing,
Absolutely.
I feel like if he can show that consistency and show this that he's building, essentially, he's learning how to read the defenses and learning when to throw and when not to, and where to go with those coverages and that sort of stuff. And if I feel like if you can do that for the next 6 games, then yeah, absolutely, you 100% know where you need to be, where you need to pick in the draft, and who you need to target in free agency to really build around Bryce Young, which is what they should be doing.
They've actually got a pretty decent O-line now. I've kind of been looking at it all year, obviously, for fantasy purposes, but they actually protect him quite well. So at least you've got some stability there. And obviously they got Adam Thielen back. I know he's as old as dirt, but he definitely helps Bryce Young when he's out there. He's obviously a veteran presence, and he obviously knows all his routes very well. And, I just think he sort of is a safety blanket for Bryce Young when he's there. And then he's got a pretty good connection with Xavier Legette as well. So the pieces are there, can hand off to Hubbard, and then obviously Brooks when he sort of gets acclimated. I think there are actually reasons to believe this offense could actually be pretty good moving forward.
Yeah, Thielen, although on paper didn't do much in this game, he drew the defensive pass interference that sort of set up I think their final TD in the third quarter. It was a huge bomb from Young. I think it went like 60, 70 yards, and Thielen caught it essentially on the end zone, but drew a flag. Well, didn't quite catch it, but it was there. And then they just basically ran it in from the one with Chuba. So it's like he set that up, and it was pretty good. So even though on paper Thielen doesn't look great for this game, he did actually come back and he was pretty good for them. So that was good showing, considering he's just come back from injury. Hey, something else I wanted to bring up while we're talking about rookie QBs and second-year rookie QBs in Bryce Young, there is another one too. And there's this narrative forming in the NFL right now that all these Anthony Richardson apologists can't stand to hear that he might not be a good QB at this point and might need just more time to develop it. But at the same time, we get the same people saying that Bryce Young is this bad first overall pick. Now, there's only 3 picks between them in the same draft. Through their last 4 games, a little bit of stats, one of these guys has a completion percentage of 44.7%, whilst the other is at 61.7%. Which would you rather out of those 2 percentages?
I think I would rather the 61, thanks, Ian.
Right. Actually, would you really? So, and obviously what I'm trying to get at here is that Richardson hasn't been that great over the last 4 games. I totaled some stuff up today. As I said there with Bryce Young, he had like 784 yards. In that same stretch, Richardson's only thrown for about 400 yards. And he sort of couples these games together all the way. These throws, he'll do these amazing like short window throws, like pinpoints into a bucket kind of throws, but then couple that with these boneheaded moves downfield, or just throwing at guys in triple coverage that have got no chance, and not reading defense, taking sacks. And I just can't understand this narrative that seems to be forming that we can forgive Anthony Richardson for his sins, but Bryce Young's bad.
I still believe there's a fantasy narrative around Anthony Richardson where people kind of give him a bump up because of the rushing ability, and because in fantasy you don't really have to worry about completion, percentage. Yep. So, this guy goes out there and he throws, 10 for 28 or 11 for 28, and, he doesn't have a huge amount of yardage, but if he goes out there and has 70 yards and then jags a touchdown or 2 on the ground, he looks amazing for fantasy, but he actually hasn't helped his team win. And we also had a question last week about Josh Downs versus Malik Neighbours, and obviously people freaking out about Neighbours going to buddy Tommy Cutlets. And I said I would still rather Neighbours because I just don't believe there's any connection between Downs and Richardson. And the problem is everything Downs does is in the intermediate routes. And I actually trust Richardson more throwing an 80-yard bomb than I do him throwing a 5-yard out. Like, he is so bad at, like, it's almost like he's got the eyesight that you can see long but you can't see short. Yeah. He just cannot throw, like, easy passes. It's like anything that's, like, simple for him is so not simple. It's like amazing. He actually hurts his team with that stuff because everyone loves seeing these like 70, 80 yard highlights. But in the end, what makes quarterbacks great is accuracy see with Mahomes all the time, like just taking the easy out, like taking the 5 or 6 yard dump off instead of going for the home run ball. It actually helps your team more. And Richardson has these amazing Madden-like plays, but the problem is he has 3 or 4 of them a game, and that's all he does. Like, he doesn't have the easy, moments. So I'm with you. Like, I'll even take it further, right? And people are complaining about like a Bo Nix or something coming out, spending 4 or 5 years in college. But you look how like NFL ready that guy is straight away as a rookie, compared to say like Anthony Richardson or like a Trey Lance when he was picked so high. All they talked about with both of these guys is how little they had actually played in college. They'd barely thrown a pass. And look, all of a sudden they're in the NFL, and my God, they're shithouse at passing. Who could have seen it? And everyone goes, oh, you've got to give him time, Well, why didn't they just have more time in college? Why didn't they just spend 2 or 3 more years in college and come out ready like a Bo Nix did? Like, it's just amazing. I'm with you. Like, they just give him all this, they need to give him all this time, whereas Bryce Young, basically, because he came in as the number 1 pick, and spent a bit extra time, obviously, he just had to come out and be ready straight off the bat, whereas a Richardson didn't. I don't really understand it.
So what you're saying, mate, is that maybe Richardson needs to go the Jameis route and get a bit of LASIK.
And we back again out here playing some football on Thursday night. Yes! Yes! Oh my gosh!
Oh, LASIK Jameis, my favourite. Although, to be honest, I used to like it more when he didn't have the LASIK and he just would peg it everywhere. To be fair, he's still pegging it. They're never going to get that out of his game, but the old 30 and 30 season, that was one of my favourites. There's nothing better especially like in the fantasy community, there's nothing better than a quarterback that throws a pick six, because not only do they get the ball straight back, they're then down and then have to throw even more. So that is the perfect recipe for fantasy success. So I used to absolutely love that guy.
I love him too. I absolutely love Jameis, especially after this week. That snow game, everything that has come out of that snow game with the Browns has just been 100% amazing. Like, yes, the Browns are finally playing amazing, and it's great. It's good to see. Good to see for a fan base. It would have been nice if the Browns organisation could have believed everybody in the universe before now that they needed to go with Jameis, because that would have given them a better chance. But, like, just the meme potential and just the basic, like, wholesome audio that's come out of Jameis Winston playing in a snow game has just been phenomenal.
Shout out to those fans, man. Like, if you ever complain about fans of the Cleveland Browns, then you need an uppercut, because they were out there in the middle of the snow, 2-8 team, still out there supporting, and
they
packed
packed that place too. I don't think there was an empty seat, and it was like, knowing that it was gonna snow, they're a 2-8 team, they completely packed it, and they were still there. I couldn't believe on the broadcast they kept saying it like, no one's left, and it's like, why would you? Like, at that point, why would you? Your team's winning, it's snowing, like, fucking.
They took it amongst themselves. It's like they were all like happier that it was snowing. It was like, it made it it's like, this is our opportunity to show how tough we are. Like, we're Cleveland strong. It was awesome. They were all shirtless out there. Yeah. It was fucking amazing.
I mean, I don't know about if I could do it shirtless, but I think if I got the opportunity to go to an NFL game and I saw that it was going to be snowing, I'd be like 100% in. I'd be like, I'm going to an NFL game in snow, middle of winter, I'd be totally in. But I definitely wouldn't be doing it shirtless, that's for sure. Some of those dudes have got to be like probably 20 Bud Lights deep, I think.
The game I went to in Seattle was the complete opposite. I got fucking sunburned. It was so hot. To be fair, about 60 beers deep from the bloody tailgating party they dragged me to before the game. But yeah, I got sunburned all over my face because I was in the Hawk's Nest and the sun just went fucking barreling onto my face.
In Seattle.
If I was going shirtless, it would have been the complete opposite.
In Seattle. It's not even like you're in Florida or anything.
I was in Seattle and it was still fucking hot.
At least if I get to go to something, it's likely to be a Vikings game and I'm indoors, so I don't need to worry about any of that shit.
That's very true.
Yeah, just losing my hearing. That's going to be the only part of it. All right, hey, let's. How about we talk about a team that we know too well because of a couple of our friends that are absolutely on the skids this season. The 49ers are currently 5-6, rivaling the lows of the 2018 or 2020 seasons. After 8 seasons at San Francisco with only 2 NFC championships, despite some very talented rosters, do you think it's time to make a change at head coach? Is Kyle Shanahan on the hot seat, mate?
I've kind of gone back and forward on this, and it kind of has been a bit of a year from hell for them. Like, obviously, in the preseason, before the Ayuk shit, holding out, missing practice, then all of a sudden coming back and getting the contract, then Buddy tearing his ACL anyway. Debo's been in and out, Kittle's been in and out. Kittle's been amazing when he's been on the field, by the way. Absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah.
CMC's missed basically the entire season. They've had injuries all over their sort of O-line and D-line. Like, it's just kind of been that, like I said, that year from hell. Like, I'm not like Matty said, I'm not going to come here and tear shreds off the fucking 49ers. I kind of see the side of, I just think this has been one of those bad years for him. I don't personally agree with getting rid of a coach when he's just taken them to the Super Bowl. I get it. They're win now, so you can't really have years like this. But at the same time, I think if you're an owner, you have to look at this like, man, like we've just been dealt a tough hand this year. I do believe they're probably going to fizzle out the rest of this year. They've got a really tough schedule. They're going to go to Buffalo this week. That's going to be really, really tough, especially if Purdy doesn't play. But I don't really agree with axing him yet. If they have another struggle next year, then yes, sure. But I just really don't understand why you get rid of him a year removed from having a Super Bowl run. I just don't know who you go to next year that all of a sudden helps you win now more than Shanahan.
Yeah, that's fair enough. And I guess Kyle Shanahan would get picked up in an instant by another team. Needing a head coach, so you'd probably come up against him at some point. It's so unfortunate for 49ers fans that they know that they are in total win now mode this season because they're in cap hell next season, just because of the way the roster's been built. And just for the season to go the way it has, when you know that next year you're going to have to clear house in some way because you've got to pay Purdy and you've just paid Ayuk and you paid Trent Williams, who wasn't even out there. That's the other thing about this game, this Packers game, where they lose 38-10. No Purdy, no Ayuk, no Trent Williams. Bosa was out. You're losing so many guys. And you've got Brandon.
Can you imagine if any other team lost that many guys?
I know.
The Niners get crucified because of their depth in a way. Like, people see who is still on the field and they go, oh, they've still got Debo, they've still got Kittle. They've got CMC back. They should still be able to do this, but they forget how many guys are actually out of this team. If you pulled 4 guys of that caliber out of any other team, they would seriously not even be able to compete at all. Like, I know they barely did 38-10, but I just think we probably give them a little bit more credit and say, man, they are just missing so many players that it's just one of those years that you've just got to chalk it down to, all right, we're going to move on.
Absolutely, fair enough. Someone who is back, though, Tua and the Dolphins lit up the lowly New England Patriots in Florida this week. A second quarter beatdown courtesy of Tua and Jalen Waddle saw the Dolphins get out to a 31-0 third quarter lead before the Patriots managed a touchdown on offense and then one on defense to stem the blowout. Tua's thrown for over 1,000 yards and 10 TDs in the past 4 games, Taylor. 4 games. But his running mate, Tyreek, is the most explosive player in the NFL once. The guy who we call the cheater. He's just been like a distant memory, hasn't he?
Hey, wide receiver 1, Jonnu Smith. I don't know what you're talking about.
Go to tight ends. Let's go.
That's the running mate of Tua.
Mate, I'm still trying to figure out how I can do a 13 personnel team when I do starts in a couple of weeks. I don't think you'll let me.
How good is it? Nothing better than a 13 personnel. I ran one out in one of my fantasy leagues. I did not win. And it was probably not my first choice thing to do, but I just really like some of the tight ends on the waivers, and I was in a buy apocalypse last week, so I basically had to run them out. But one of them being Will Dissly, who's absolutely my boy, and Jono absolutely dominated last week, and he's been on a tear for like 5 weeks now. Like, this isn't just like a flash in the pan. Like, they've clearly decided that this is where they can beat teams, and teams obviously have coverages to try and take out Tyreek. Normally, it hasn't worked in past years, but This year, I think they've just been happy to go, all right, other teams are going to try and take out Tyreek. Let's just fucking dump it off to Jono. Like, let's take sort of the smaller-ish routes and just because Jono's always been good with Yak. Like, he's actually been like quite an athletic piece, like in the offense. I still remember him at the Titans back in the day. He actually was a real red zone threat. He actually had some really good numbers out of the tight end position. And you obviously saw him pilfering the Kyle Pitts last year in Atlanta. So he's actually got talent. Like there's reasons why teams use this guy in offense. And even though Tyreek hasn't really got going, it's almost been like by committee. It's obviously a lot of Devon Achane, obviously Jonnu Smith. Waddle finally got involved last week. Even though Tyreek's not doing his normal thing, he still has 60-odd yards, 70 to 80 yards some games, and just doesn't look like him. But it's still helping the offense. And like you said, 3 touchdowns last week, 4 touchdowns this week. He's just on an absolute heater. So look, things are looking up for Miami. Obviously, they've got a couple of tough games coming up, but, they've got through the part of their schedule they had to do. And, they've got themselves into a chance to make the playoffs.
Yeah, I know. It's amazing to say that because a few weeks ago they had absolutely no chance to really make the playoffs. And it's a tough road out of AFC East as it is at the best of times. But this season is just crazy. Hey, a bit of a flex. I ran a 13 personnel a couple of weeks ago in a random orphan dynasty league that I'd picked up, and it had a couple of random blokes on the. I got a pick in the draft and used that wisely on Brock Bowers. Already had got it, and I picked up Otten off the waivers that week, and I ran 13 personnel, and it absolutely killed it. So when you get Bowers got it and Kate Otten, it's a hell of a tight end trio. I think I've got all the tight ends in the league, to be honest.
Everyone else is in tight end hell.
Yeah, look, AFC East has been a bit of a basket case. Of course, the Bills are 9-2, so they're absolutely killing it, and they've been on a bye this week. But yeah, you're right. Dolphins are in second spot there now. They might actually have some kind of a chance to make the 7. They are sitting at eighth spot right now in the AFC. So
very tough game this week in Green Bay, and it's kind of the prototypical game that Miami would normally struggle in. Obviously, colder weather.
Yeah, that's the big thing, isn't it? Like this is going to be the big test. Can you get over the cold weather narrative that was built last season because of those that Chiefs game, especially?
I hope they do, to be honest, because I came into this year, obviously, we couldn't forecast what happened to Tua with the head injury. I know, obviously, he's always a chance at it because of his previous history, but I came into this year thinking the Miami offense wasn't talked about enough, because I feel like sometimes, and this happens in all sports, where you almost go with the narrative of how a team's season finished the year before, and it felt like everyone had forgotten how good Miami's offense was because everyone remembered how shit it was in the cold against the Chiefs in the playoffs, and I felt like they were getting underrated coming into this year, and then obviously we really didn't get to see him properly because Tua went out so early, and then when he came back, he didn't look fantastic. I think everyone thought, the narrative was right at the start of the year, but now I'm actually glad that even though it's not all through Tyreek and what they'd normally do, I'm just happy to see this offense clicking again because I've always been a Tua fan and I feel like he gets underrated.
Yeah. And as I said, 1,000 yards and 10 TDs in 4 games is phenomenal.
Yeah,
massive. And he's just finding new ways. McDaniels gave him that props in the press conference after the game, is that he's found new ways to see and play the game in terms of he's developed. He's worked on himself, and he's not panicking as much if things don't go right, and then he's not thinking about that play didn't go right in the next play. He's thinking about that play in the moment, So, and that's what the great QBs do.
I'd give McDaniel credit too. I brought up a few weeks ago that I was worried that teams had sort of worked him out a little bit. He just, obviously he's been seen as his genius mind and everything, which he is. But it worried me that, when Tua first came back, and obviously some of the games with bloody Skylar Thompson and Tyler Huntley and everything, that, he just didn't quite have this genius mind to be able to sort of scheme up things for those guys in those moments. But it feels to me like he's almost looked at it and gone, all right, let's, everyone's expecting us to have to go to Tyreek. I feel like he's done well to start looking at ways to like just get Arachnid involved more in the backfield, get Jonnu Smith more involved, like basically stuff that other teams probably weren't expecting. And I feel like that's a huge kudos to him because I don't think that's exactly what he wanted to do when he first got Tyreek Hill and Waddle. Like I think the assumption was that he was going to draw up all these plays for those guys, which he did initially. But now he's found different ways to get other guys involved, and it's really helped the whole offense, as a whole. And I wouldn't be surprised if all of a sudden other teams start scheming away from Jonnu Smith and what Achan's doing in the backfield. We might see more of Tyreek Hill and Waddle. Then all of a sudden it's like, shit, what do we do? Like, we don't know who to defend. We can't defend all four of them at once. So I think he's done really well there.
Yep, absolutely has. Let's shift to the NFC and the Lions, who are looking like the most dominant regular season team since you threw this one out there, mate, and I totally forgot about them. The 2007 undefeated Patriots, or the other one, the 2008-2009 Indianapolis Colts. Like, those two teams were absolutely dominant in the regular season, and the Lions moved to 10-1 this week with that win over the Colts. A more subdued affair, of course, at 24-6 than their 52-point thrashing of the Jags last week. So the only blemish on that perfect season so far for Dan Campbell's squad is that Week 2 loss at home to Baker and the Bucks.
Knew you'd find a way to get Baker into this. You love a fair with Baker. No, it's well-deserved this year. Mate, I'm with you. I brought up last week that I wish Dan Campbell was my son's dad. I just absolutely love that guy.
And this is, you know what? I reckon you and Dan Campbell will be about the same size too. So I could see the missus having a bit of a love affair with Dan Campbell as well.
Mate, look, if I came in and saw him sleeping with my wife, I'd ask him if he wanted a cup of tea. He's just an absolute weapon, that bloke. I just love him. Like, when they show his like post game, celebrations and talking about all the stats of his guys and you'd want to run through a wall for that guy. And like, ironically, that guy could run through fucking two walls. Like that, he's an absolute machine. And I hate all this shit in sport about like taking your foot off the gas when you're in front by a lot. This is fucking professional sports. Like, if you cannot defend the other team, I just love that he just goes for the jugular. I absolutely love it because it's not out there in sports enough. You look at NBA and NFL and all these teams are just coasting. They run the ball in the last quarter and a half because they don't want to run up a score.
Or they put the second, in basketball where they put the second stringers on the court instead. They take all the main guys off the court because you're running the score up too much. And yeah.
I will say I understand it a little more in NBA because they're playing 82 games in a season.
Oh yeah, 100%.
But trying to load manage their guys. Like, there's no point, I guess, in trying to do that. But you're playing fucking 17 games. Like, why not just like get out there and just fucking showcase everything? Like, he uses the last quarter or the last half of a game when he's spanking the other team to like go through some of his trick plays and go through some of the stuff that he might need later in the year. Like, he kind of uses it as an opportunity for his team to like keep playing well and not get rusty instead of just like playing shit in the second half and just letting the other team sort of get back into the game.
It's almost
they're not just winning, they're smashing them.
Yeah, that's right. It's almost like the old it's like a scrimmage thing. It's like a training scrimmage thing. You're training, but in a real game situation. And that's what I love too. You can see them doing that. They use not just the trick plays. You can tell that they're trying out other plays when they get up that high. Like, what happens if we run this guy in this situation and that guy here? What happens if we run 13 personnel in this play, but they're playing outside the numbers? They run those things. And as you said, you can clearly tell it's so that they can work out what they can do against the better teams once they hit postseason, because that's what they're going to be. They're going to be the number one seed for sure. So they're going to get that extra week off, which will really help them. Although I don't know whether Goff is that great coming off a bye all the time. So I don't know whether they really want to keep playing. But it's so good to see that they do that. Yeah, and as you said, that they don't take the foot off the gas. As I said last week, they'll ignore your safe word.
Exactly. Yeah. Dan Campbell just says, "Fuck that safe word. Let's just keep going." Like, we finish when I say we finish.
Yeah. Next couple of weeks though, they got 3 home games in a row. 2 against the Bears and the Packers. So divisional games, very important, obviously. especially with the way the Vikings and the Packers are playing. Everyone in that division just seems to keep pushing and chasing each other. And then the third week, they've got a match up against the Buffalo Bills. So it'll be interesting to see how long this 9-game winning streak continues.
I've got a feeling they're going to want to put a show on this Thanksgiving because they lost last year. They basically got, well, not boat race, but, the Packers came there and punched in their mouth last year on Thanksgiving. So I think they're going to really want to put a statement win up against the Bears this week. So I wouldn't be surprised. I think the line's 10, which sounds high, but I wouldn't be surprised if this Lions team just really came and put a fucking smack down on the Bears this week.
Might take them at -15.
Yeah, no, everyone laughs, right, because they don't know how to set the Lions games, with their line. They'll put, them at -12 or -13 against a pretty shit team. But the problem is, they can't factor in how ridiculously good this Lions team is at just running scores up. But they don't want to set a line at, 26 because they feel like it could just be ridiculous. Even though there's a decent enough chance that's what they're actually going to win by. It's hard. So, I think the Lions money line is, basically the best bet you could have done all year. I think it's 9-1. It's basically their record. They've pretty much I think every time they've won, they've covered.
Yeah.
So,
it's I think the problem with running it up that high is things like this week where the Chiefs were favoured by 11.5 over the Panthers. And you look, it was a 3-point game. Yeah. That's the easiest money I've won all year, I think. When I see the Chiefs just winning games, and I'm like, yeah, it might be the Panthers, but I can see them doing something stupid here. And sure enough, that's what happened. So it was paying huge.
That's what the line makers don't factor in sometimes. It's they just look at the record of the teams. It's not what they're actually winning by per se. And the fact that a team in the second half just keeps playing and keep trying to dominate the other team, whereas the Chiefs just love playing one-score games. It's just the way that they're wired. They don't really have this breakout offense that they're going to just keep scoring in the second half. I think the one of the best bets you could do last year, I think it was basically every Chiefs second half or their game to be unders. It went 15-0 or something. It was every single game, the second half of their games was just an absolute dire affair with just no points because they were either they just led by 3 points and they just never let the other team get in front of them and they didn't give a shit about scoring themselves. And it just dragged all their fantasy players and all their stats into the mud because they didn't really give a shit. They just wanted to win close games.
Yeah. Eagles running back Saquon Barkley hit Super Saiyan mode during November. 5 touchdowns for 626 yards, busted coverages, aerial acrobatics. 2 questions, Tay, around the Eagles. Surely Saquon can finally claim the crown from King Henry. And are the Eagles closer to the Lions in the NFC than we actually think? They seem to be pretty well under the radar.
Mate, I could not have waxed lyrical more about Saquon and King Henry in the preseason. I could not fathom how there wasn't more talk about them. I know you were too. You absolutely, we got you to do a video about your favourite fantasy player coming in this year, and to your credit, you said Saquon. And
everyone laughed. The boys actually laughed when we did the first take of that. They were like, "You serious? You can't. I'd written them down too, and they're like, "You can't pick Saquon. Surely not after last season." I'm like, no, she's the Eagles.
I think I had him as my third running back off the board, whereas he was going about 8th or 9th. I was so high on him, I ended up with him about 6 leagues. But, fantasy aside, I just could not fathom how people thought this wasn't going to work. I didn't understand it. And the biggest thing that I don't think it's talked about when we look at guys like this is the difference in O-line that they're going from to what they're now at. It was the most egregious difference between the O-line he had at the Giants and what he was walking to in Philly. And obviously people were talking about Kelsey retiring and they thought, is this O-line, not as good, whatever. I'm like, well, even if it's not as good, let's say it's not first, it's 4th now. What he was dealing with at the Giants was basically the second worst offensive line per PFF, only in front of the Titans, who I'll get to when we talk about fucking King Henry. What he went from in like I said, the second worst offensive line to the 4th best was absurd. And what we saw last year was, I think it was DeAndre Swift basically was getting hit like 2 or 3 yards behind the line of scrimmage every single play. So, in front, like as in he was going 2 or 3 yards before he was getting hit. So I'm like, if you can get that for Saquon Barkley, can you imagine what he's going to be able to do in this offense? And it's just been that and that and that and that. Like, it's just been that with Spades, mate. Like, the holes that open up for that guy are just insane. It's big, like, honestly, they're bigger than a fucking porn star's arsehole sometimes. Like, they are just huge. Like, they are so wide you could send a fucking Mack truck through, and he's so skilled that he can just do anything he wants with it. So, I just don't understand why people weren't on this more. I really don't. I don't want to stand here on my soapbox because I'll probably fucking break it, and talk too much about, like, my preseason calls and stuff, but I just really don't understand why people weren't on this more. What has he got? Nearly 1,400 yards.
Yeah,
or something?
just under 1,400 yards. Him and Henry are 1 and 2 right now. In the league for rushing numbers, they are both of them are 400 yards ahead of third place, and both of their stats are amazing, and they're so evenly matched. Henry's played a game more than Barkley at this point. Their attempts are basically the same. Their yards are within 50 yards of each other. They've got, like, Saquon's got 12 big plays, so 12 plus 20 plus rushing yard plays so far this season. 10 TDs. Henry's got 13, and he's 14 20 plus plays. Saquon Barkley is averaging 126.5 yards per game, and Henry is 110.4. So it's just phenomenal that these two are just going yard for yard and pound for pound at the moment. And the way he's playing, and as you said, the way they're playing, they're sort of set up. The Eagles were set up for Saquon to have a huge amount of success, as you said, with where Swift was getting hit, in front of the line, etc., all that sort of stuff as well. So you put Saquon into that. But then you've also got someone like Jalen Hurts, who has a big rushing upside, and you've got defenses that sort of have to account for that. So they have to be thinking, is it going to be Jalen that runs? Is it going to be Saquon that runs? And you just don't know.
But, like, Saquon compared to DeAndre Swift, let's just look at that. Like, he is so much better of a running back, and he makes better decisions. Like, the problem with Swift is he didn't have great awareness of where the gaps were. Like, you'd see highlights, and he'd still go for, like, 4 or 5 yards, and you'd be like, looking at it going, if he'd just gone here, he would have had 30. Like, he just couldn't quite see the stuff that Saquon's seeing right now.
Yeah.
And the thing is, this offensive line opens up such big holes that a guy like Saquon's just taken him to the house. You saw yesterday, he gets into the backfield.
He's
and
so
gone.
fast.
Like,
he's so fast.
He's 60, 70 yards. They just can't touch
and
him.
I feel like we were talking about that speed and the power running last year with Pacheco, and it's like the same thing, And it's the same. It's the same thing. The way they run, it's just power running. As soon as they get in the open field, it's just like sensational.
He doesn't land on his back. He lands forwards. Like, even when he gets hit, he seems to get 2 more yards or something. Like, even on just a pedestrian play that's only going to go for 2 yards, he gets 4. Like, that's kind of what I say with Henry too. But it's just like I said with Henry, he went from the worst offensive line I've ever seen. Like I used to say to Matty C, like, yeah, it's 32nd out of 32 teams, but it should be like 50th out of 32 teams. Like, it was so bad that even going to the Ravens, who, to be fair, they lost a lot of offensive talent on their O-line this year. Like, they basically went from, like, the 5th best O-line to, like, the 25th. So they had a big downgrade there, but at the same time, that was still far better than what he was dealing with. So it's the same as Saquon in a way. Like, I do believe that if you switched Saquon and Henry would have probably better production on the Eagles, because the gaps that offensive line opens up, I don't think Henry's getting that same thing. So if you're just talking, like, running back talent this year, I still feel like Henry is up there with Saquon, because I think Saquon has better pieces around him. So that's the only thing I would say. But I think, like, just off what you've seen this year, Saquon's the king this year, I think.
All right, well then, the question is, the Eagles closer to the Lions than we think in the NFC?
They're definitely the closest. I'll put it that way. Look, I'm with you. Like, the only problem, if you're talking about it just like tomorrow if they played each other, the biggest issue is I think that Lions the D-line is probably the best suited to try and stop Saquon. So I think that'd be the kind of game that you would need to see more out of Jalen Hurts. And that's, I guess, the only question mark right now is if the Eagles were in a game where it had to be Hurts with his arm, would we actually see like the same continuity for this Eagles team that we've seen so far, with just being able to hand the ball to Saquon and he's just absolutely torn the other team a new arsehole with it? So I do have my question marks about that. I do believe that, I guess, the Lions can win in more ways than the Eagles can. I kind of trust the passing game more of the Lions than I do the Eagles at this stage. I'm not saying they can't, and we just haven't seen a lot of Hurts needing to throw for 250 yards or anything like that. I'm not saying he can't. He's got AJ Brown and Devontae Smith when he's healthy, and obviously Saquon can be involved in the passing game as well. So I'm not saying he can't do it. I just think I'd trust in a controlled environment, assuming this game was in Detroit, Goff with that O-line being able to pass on St. Brown and Laporta when he actually needs him, and, obviously the two running backs out of the backfield. And I just think they can run the ball so well with that offensive line, but they can also pass it, and they've got so many weapons all over the place. Whereas the Eagles, I need to see more of their passing game to believe that all of a sudden they could win a shootout style game where they couldn't just rely on Barkley. So that would be my, I guess, question mark. But I will say the Eagles defensively have been fucking amazing. Their draft, like obviously of Quinyon Mitchell and, obviously getting, I've forgotten his name off the top of my head. Cooper DeJean.
Cooper DeJean, yeah.
Obviously getting those two guys falling to them has just been amazing. And they've basically turned that secondary from a secondary you could target to one that they're just locking other teams down. So I'll give them a lot of credit on defense. I think they've got the better defense out of them in the Lions. So if you take all that, put all that together, I think they are actually close. But I would still obviously take the Lions just the way that they're playing at the moment. But the Eagles are probably, they're definitely the closest to beating them in the NFC. They may even be the closest to beating them in the NFL.
The amazing part is that there's no way we're going to see them match up until deep in the playoffs. So,
hypothetical.
Yeah, but it's just good that we won't see those top two teams. Yeah, some years you get the top two teams and suddenly they'll end up with each other early in the playoffs, or they're in a division together. It's just dumb stuff like that, and it just kind of ruins the whole spectacle of maybe the top two teams getting to the championship game.
Yep.
Yeah. So, exactly. But they would have to, if it all ended today, the Eagles have to do it the hard way, going through the Commanders, and then probably, I don't know, the Vikings or the Falcons after that, whoever won there. So there'd be hard ways. That's for sure. Doesn't matter which way you skin it. So
I just think that defense sets them up for success. It means they just don't have to do as much offensively as they've probably had to do the last couple of years. So I just think that if they're locking other teams down, they're only scoring somewhere between 14 to 20 points. Just doesn't mean that, one fucking ass push into the end zone for Jalen Hurts and one breakaway play for Saquon. They don't really have to do much more. And you've got fucking Swole Batman out there, AJ Brown, can do anything in the passing game. So I just feel like the weapons are there. But that defense just means they don't have to do a huge amount on offense, which is kind of glorious for them. They're set up so much better than they were last year.
Sorry, Mrs. just messaged me.
Hang on, mate.
Check out scanning topics. All right, so last up for tonight, mate. The Washington Commanders have struggled recently, now on a 3-game losing streak after a tough loss to the Dallas Cowboys. Who would have thought we'd be saying that a couple of weeks ago?
Oh, my God.
Despite being the 7th seed in the NFL right now, as I just said when we were talking about the Eagles, and they would have to match up if we finish today, with the Cardinals only a game back, Bucks 2 games behind, some sort of tough matchups coming forward. Do you think the Commanders might have really screwed it and missed their playoff opportunity?
I am worried about them. I did hear a stat couple of weeks ago, and because everyone used to laugh about Kyler Murray, and whenever Call of Duty came out, there was a huge downtick on his performance. Whereas it's actually Cliff Kingsbury actually seems to have the same sort of downtick in his performance when the Call of Duty comes out as well. It's more so to do with teams actually like figuring him out. And, he loves having a mobile quarterback. It seems to work really well in his offenses, but it's weird. Like, he seems to sort of fall in a heap a little bit himself in the second half of years. He doesn't seem to adapt in-game. He seems to have good game analysis before the game starts, but he doesn't sort of adapt to what other teams really throw at him. And I'm wondering if teams have sort of figured him out and the offense of Jaden Daniels a little bit, because they are just not the same. Like, you saw what was a 3 or 4 game, sample size there at the start of the year where they basically punted like once or twice in 4 games. It was absurd. Like, they just weren't getting stopped by anyone. The punter was basically catching a cold out there on the sideline. There was no use for him. But now they just don't look the same. There's the continuity's not there. Until that last play, like Terry McLaurin just didn't have the same connection with Daniels at all. I've seen many games where Daniels is like in the low hundreds for passing yards into the fourth quarter. It just doesn't look like the same team to me. Obviously, they've got issues of Brian Robinson and Eckler are a decent chance of missing this week, so they're basically down to the third-string running back. They've got their concerns all over the place, to be honest. And, yeah, I think if anyone's going to fall out of that playoff race, it's kind of been set for a little while there, but if anyone's going to fall out, I think it's probably going to be them.
Yeah, I was looking at some schedule stuff today, and like the Bucks, for instance, and I'm just shoehorning the Bucks into conversations, but I'm not. It's they've got like I think the 31st, the 31st in strength of schedule in terms of they've got the second easiest strength of schedule going home, where both the Cardinals and the Commanders are sort of right in the middle of that pack. So the Bucks are kind of set up just to keep stacking wins here at 5 and 6. So I worry that the Commanders have maybe sort of losing this game against Dallas seems to have screwed it completely.
I'm with you, mate. Obviously, getting Mike Evans back's massive for the Bucks, and Baker's kind of been being able to piece it together, even when he lost both Evans and Godwin, and he just basically had to start slinging it to Kate Otten, and he still looked like a very good quarterback, even without all his weapons. But to get him back, and then obviously Bucky Irving and Rashad White are a pretty good tandem on the ground, and I'm with you. I honestly think they could make a massive push for the playoffs. I think they're set up for success as well. So, yeah, I think there's a lot of teams chasing them. And I kind of brought up this, I think it was a couple of weeks ago, we got a question about, it was sort of on the same path as the Malik Neighbors thing, but I've got this question mark sometimes when rookies come out, like I'm talking about Jaden Daniels as quarterbacks, when they actually come out and dominate early, I actually worry more about their end of season than rookies that come out and struggle early, because it's almost like when you come out and start playing really, really well, it's almost like you don't have to work on your game as hard. And it's the same with wide receivers. Like me and Maddie were talking about it, and we wondered whether a guy like Marvin Harrison's probably set up for success in the second half of the year more than, say, Malik Neighbors, because Malik Neighbors played so well at the start that he didn't really have these like rookie kinks that he had to work out. And all of a sudden, I feel like he's going that well that all of a sudden he starts getting better coverages and people start looking at him more. And if he doesn't actually have the work ethic to actually, get himself better to beat these defenses, then all of a sudden you kind of see like a rookie wall hit. Whereas like these guys that struggle early, they kind of got to work on their game, and it's hard to hit a rookie wall when you've already hit it. So they sort of break through, and I wondered if that was going to happen with Daniels. And you've kind of seen the opposite trajectory with a Bo Nix, right? You saw Bo Nix struggle in the first 3 or 4 weeks. He had a game where he threw for like 60 yards and he was struggling, but because he actually had to work on his game, and he obviously had Peyton there to sort of work through it with, you've seen him blossom and getting better and better every week. Whereas I'm wondering if Daniels kind of just rested on his laurels a bit. I'm not trying to call him out. Like, I'm sure he didn't, but I just feel like, he kind of got worked out a little bit. And if Cliff wasn't willing to sort of put in that extra work to change up the offense a bit, I just feel like maybe he's been found out a little bit. I'm not saying that's, he's going to be shit the rest of his career or anything. He's going to be great. But I just think that in the middle of the season, when you've already dominated early as a rookie, it kind of doesn't give you that oomph to really push to be better in the second half of the year. And I feel like we're seeing that a bit with Daniels.
Yeah, totally agree, mate. Absolutely agree. It's the development thing. They have it a bit easy. They don't get to work on the game, as you said. So the development kind of stalemates in a way. Whereas if you have adversity, you have to really just like push to develop like your own skills, your own brain in the way that you have to figure things out on your own journey, because it's not college anymore. It's not easy. It's not all just set up for just throwing deep balls into 40 different guys. Like it's, the way the college system is. So beautifully put. And I tell you what, Baker looked bloody good doing the Tommy cutlets.
Yeah, when I woke up this morning, I was feeling pretty dangerous.
So he definitely looked.
Baker's a national treasure. He's fucking awesome.
Baker, man, you know me, middling quarterbacks. Baker and Jameis Winston. I'm just done. The way that it's all been going. I'm just pissed that Minshew goes and breaks a collarbone, so I can't even watch him against the Chiefs this week, because that would have been awesome.
I know. Kev's best mate.
I would have just. It would just be a total Gardner Minshew thing, though, to light up the Chiefs like he did last year as well. So it's just.
Did you see Baker, his block he did for Bucky Irving, where Bucky Irving released and he was on he ended up with about a 60-yard run, but he got about 40, and then all of a sudden Baker was just zooming fucking next to him like he was Sonic the Hedgehog, just running right next to him, and then Bucky kind of cut behind him, and then Baker just laid out the guy that was trying to tackle him. It was amazing, and Baker was so pumped. He was just fucking like trying to dap Bucky up. It was a mad play.
It was also the just before that, though, in that same play where Bucky went out towards the sideline, and Baker's just like casually jogging down the middle of the field as he does, because it's like the play's over, like his part of the play's over. And when he noticed that Bucky was cutting back in field, the way he just sped up, and he was just like, "Oh, I got a block!" Like it was like he was so excited.
Yeah, it was that. Like he was so keen. It
was like a 6 or a 7-year-old, like, "Oh, I get to do this!" Yeah, you know.
He was so happy when he got up. Fucking mad.
And what a block too! What a hit!
Yeah, it was. It got him an extra 10 yards. Like, he tried to cut behind him. Yeah.
I don't think the DB expected to see the quarterback there blocking him either.
I was pumped, mate. I had Bucky Irving in my starts of the week team, and I traded for him in a couple of leagues. I really like we've talked about, we like the Bucks in general, their run home.
Yeah.
But it's actually really good for the offensive players in fantasy too. Like pretty much all the defenses are beatable on the ground and in the air. So I feel like it's going to be a good finish to the year offensively for sure.
Yeah, or Kate Otten, mate. That's what it's going to be.
Yeah, he was a little bit disappointing last week. I had that worry, obviously, with Evans coming back. I don't feel like Evans really affects him. Like, they're very different in terms of where they are on the field. So you would think Otten would still be relevant moving forward, but it was just odd that the first game back with Evans, that Otten was just basically not used at all. But it was the weirdest game. Like, they just boat raced him so early, and it was just... Yeah, obviously Bucky Irving was able to get it done on the ground, and
I think because it was so much of a Bucky Irving game, that's probably where that was, and it was just that was the strength. It's the Giants too. Like you're already blowing them out. What do you really need to use everybody for? You just share it around, and it's probably 68 yards is an easy game for Mike Evans these days.
Giants are one of these teams too where you look at them from a fantasy aspect about the way that they defend wide receivers and tight ends and stuff like that, and they're always actually decent, but it's not because they're actually decent, it's just because other teams smashed them in the first half. It reminded me of Carolina last year where even though they were the worst team in the league, they were actually fifth best against wide receiver, and you're like, why the hell is this? And it's because other teams only play 2.5 quarters against them. They just run the ball out in the second half, unless it's the Lions, of course. So it's kind of anomalous a little bit with some of these stats against these teams, and it's probably why Kate Otten didn't get involved, because they just didn't need him.
Well, Tampa have got to pull their finger out though. Mike Evans is only on 400 yards this season, so he's got another six. He's got 600. He's got 600 to go to keep up that streak, and they've got 6 games.
We need to do it, and this is why I traded for him a couple of leagues. I really like Evans.
I couldn't get anybody to take the bait, mate. I was all in on on your advice with that one. I'm like, absolutely. I'd already been trying to trade for him, and no one to take the bait. No one was trying. I was throwing out big assets, and I'm like, he is definitely going over 100 yards per game. So they need to pull their finger out now. He needs over 100 yards per game to get that 1,000.
Here we go. I'm all for it. I'm on the train.
Absolutely. All right. Well, that's all we got for today. It's been a pretty good week 12 slate, and great chats. Hey, it's great to have you on.
Always, mate. Absolutely, always keen to come on. I love listening to it. You guys are all, like, you and Isaac are awesome on here. And then I'm actually just really glad to see Isaac sort of venturing out in that stuff. Like, he's been a good mate of mine for a long time. I went to school with him, and that's how he ended up coming into the group chat. And I'm in a fantasy league with him, with a couple of my other mates. And, you know, he's kind of just grown, you know, week to week with his sort of NFL knowledge on that side of it. And for him to actually venture out not only just into fantasy, but to just chat NFL in general with you was actually really good to see. And I love hearing you guys both have a chat, and whether it's, you know, him on Manjot, you know, the other week, or whoever you have on here, it's really cool to hear different voices, kind of similar to what we've done this year, obviously, on the fantasy show. And, you know, obviously you and Brad and Nick, when you're together, are absolutely great to listen to as well, mate. So keep up the awesome work. And, you know, it was just great to really come on and shoot the shit with you tonight.
Yeah, mate. Yeah, it's awesome. Thanks for that. Oh, yeah, it's been great having Isaac join. Nick this year as well. You know, I mean, obviously Brad is by far the number one personality on our shows, and I think we all know that. It's not just Brad's personality, but the stuff that comes from Brad's brain and football is just sensational. I'm so glad to have all these boys. It's what I wanted out of Gday Gridiron for this season. I just wanted to get a constant cast so we could sort of rotate around. And this thing with having Isaac just night shifts every month, so it means that we get to have a few other guys on, like yourself and Manjot, and hopefully some of the other boys in the next couple of weeks, or as we go through to January and February football, although we might be all joining together again. Who knows what we're doing? We haven't planned anything this season, so we don't know.
Big things are happening with the AGN.
Big things, mate. Big things. And, of course, you can find out all about all of that stuff, thanks for the segue, Taylor, at our Linktree.
Professional.
Absolutely. Linktree /Aussie Gridiron Network. You'll find all of our social media links, all the stuff for Tay and the Aussie NFL Fantasy with Matty C. You'll find all of the stuff, the cool stuff that Manjot and Matty C are doing with Aussie Gridiron today around the local league. That's been pretty cool as well, and that's where I think all the big strides are happening right now around AGN as well. So check all that out if you haven't yet. It's awesome stuff. There's some pretty cool merch up in the merch store too. I was just going through this week, actually, and ordering a few T-shirts for some surprise gifts for people, whether they like them or not, for Christmas. You know,
nothing better than opening up a Christian the Cockslap shirt, just to really, really make the people in your life feel great.
Absolutely. Yeah, someone might be getting that. And you too can order some pretty fun presents for any of your loved ones or your friends if you want. So go there, merch store, check it all out. Everything's on sale at the moment, actually. So go and check it all out and, yeah, get involved.
You're basically making money by buying shirts. Get in there.
Oh, yeah. Oh, make them buy them and resell them. We don't care. Who knows? All right.
I'll swap one for you.
No worries.
I don't know if it increases or increases the value, but we'll see.
We'll see for sure. All right. Thanks very much, everyone, for joining us. And, of course, make sure you check out our Saturday game preview show with Brad and Nick and maybe even Isaac. So check it all out. Again, you'll find us later in the week. Check these guys out on Aussie NFL Fantasy both Friday and Sunday for all of the fantasy advice leading into lucky number week 13 in the NFL. Until then, see you later.
The G'day Gridiron podcast is brought to you by the Aussie Gridiron Network, a network of Australian podcasts bringing the fun and a little bit of the Aussie larrikin to the NFL and fantasy football. Check out our other amazing productions. Australia's #1 fantasy football podcast, the Aussie NFL Fantasy Show. Everything about the local game at Aussie Gridiron today. Manjot's Pastry Press on Instagram and YouTube, and Australia's very own Dynasty podcast, No Huddle Dynasty. Find links to everything at Linktree /Aussie Gridiron Network.